And alright. I could do what for you? Anywho. So we have a Lee Sedol game, as you can see. Oh, no. So we have a Lee Sedol game, as you can see. I'm sure all of you are familiar with Lee Sedol. If anyone is not, he is a little bit aggressive. So you can expect to see a bit of fighting in this game. Which is the reason why I study him. Whenever I feel that my fighting is not where I feel it ought to be, I just go back and I start reviewing Lee Sedol games. For inspiration, and to learn, as it were. And of course, as we normally see in the games I go over, we're not going to see anything unusual in the opening. If you've been studying modern games, it should come as no surprise to you that Black decides to quickly set up a Chinese variation. Because it seems everybody is playing Chinese variations in all of their games. If White doesn't do it, or sorry, if Black doesn't do it, then chances are White's going to do it. Or maybe they're both going to do it. But it's something that we've really been seeing for the past couple of months. Truthfully, I'm getting kind of sick of it. But not this game. This game, I'm happy to see it. Because it turns out very, very interestingly. Now, real quick, we have a few different options that we can go ahead and explore here. You can ask while I'm going over it. I cannot read your mind. But we have a couple of options here for White. White can go ahead and pincer, putting pressure both on F3 as well as beginning to approach this framework that Black set up. He could go ahead, well, probably not. We used to sometimes see a move played at A. But typically when we see that nowadays, Black just goes ahead and takes B, treating F3 extremely lightly. If White really wants to kill the F3 stone, Black will again ignore it and probably expand along the top as well. So that's 2 extensions off the framework, pretty good. Which is why typically we see more of a pincer here. Of course, the other typical responses to the low Chinese Fuseki, we can go ahead and approach it in many different styles. And the question is, so is everyone playing Chinese because it is not yet so well known? Wait a minute, looks like you have a ton of questions. You always say it's bad to turn it into an enclosure with an extension because it is known how to reduce it. So are we playing it because it's not... Well, yeah, they are exploring different variations with it. That is true. And I don't say that it's, at least I try not to say that it's bad to turn it into an enclosure with an extension. It's not what I prefer. I do point out that if you do turn the Chinese into an enclosure with an extension, then your position is a little bit easier to handle because you can go ahead and look up in, whatever Go books that you happen to have on hand, how to go ahead and reduce it. And I'm kind of disagreeing with Radishimo a little bit. The Chinese opening has been around for a very, very long time, but there are still different variations to go ahead and explore. There are a lot of Go books. Let's see, let's give an example of that then. Let's say we don't expand that way. We can go ahead and keep our SGF tree nice and neat for the moment. Let's say you are faced with, normal low Chinese. Let's assume Black didn't go ahead and approach just yet. One thing at a time. Like Flynn said, it has been around since the 80s. There are a lot of different variations here, but depending on how far back you go, you may not see in a particular book, for example, each one of these different approaches. You may also not see... Oops, sorry. You might not also see the modern ways to actually handle these approaches, because I think a lot of these are relatively new. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Why turn it into enclosure? Because that's still territory. There's nothing wrong with taking territory. It's just a question of what do you want to do. Do you want to keep it open and potentially invadable? Do you want to go ahead and say, I've profited from this enough, I'm going to take my territory? I mean, it really just depends on how you want to approach the opening. I mean, either way is fine. Anyway, white approach is very, very close. Trying to go ahead and again see what we just mentioned, trying to force black into the enclosure. Black decides to hit for profit. If we go ahead and simply enclose, we pretty well know that white's going to back off and attack black stone. So not only do we not have the Chinese to worry about anymore, black's now under attack on the left-hand side of the board. So he's going to profit a little bit and get Sente for himself. White definitely is not going to ignore the contact stone. So white extends. And then black decides to make this game very, very complicated. He decides to pincer Lee Sedol very, very tightly. Now, he could have gone ahead, and this is going to be a bit crude, but he could have gone ahead and simply decided to say something along the lines of, I'm taking this for myself. And fifth line territory is to be respected. That is a lot of territory. But again, we come back to the pincer, and sure, black has fifth line territory on the right-hand side, but what's going to happen to f3? That becomes a very, very big question. And how do we reduce the area that white is rapidly getting influence over? So rather than deal with that, black decides, I'm going to pincer, thus provoking a very large fight for which I am grateful for. Because we see a lot of I don't want to call them right ideas, but we see a lot of interesting ways to particularly handle this stone. Because, for example, we could go ahead and try and counterattack m4. We can recognize that we're under attack here. It's time to either run away, or counterattack, or cap, or do something about this to make sure that we're nice and safe. But what I like about going over pro games is sometimes you find very, very easy, simple answers to otherwise complicated positions. And it's those simple answers that I really try to learn for myself. So here, for example, black decided, quite simply, that he was not going to worry about this area on the right. He wanted to attack instead. So white decides to say, all right, if you're not worried about that, I'm going to push on in. Black obviously has to respond. White continues to push. Black gets very greedy here and trying to keep as much of it for himself as possible. White plays a few more forcing moves and fixes his shape. That alone, I would consider a resounding success for white. Can anyone tell me why? I'm sure you can. I'm just wondering if you're going to hit all the reasons that I'm thinking of. Which groups are you referring to? DSTR8T? Sounds like you're on the right track. Tudon gets it. Ukasus. R9 and M4 each need help. That's true. Again, we're pointing out what the 22Q said. That's separate groups on the board now. White does get a lot of influence, but what's interesting about white having so much influence are, in fact, as already been said, these two groups being weak. If these groups were nice and strong, then this wouldn't be as interesting. White is, again, thick in an area that was previously black's, as Dasan said. True, true. Yeah, so essentially we have a few different reasons here. We have the corner being not completely enclosed. There's still Samaji with 03. But the corner is mostly enclosed. We've got two stones that are entirely too close to white's newfound thickness. And we've also have, as a product of being enclosed, obviously white is now into an area that was previously mostly under black's control. So all of these are very, very interesting points for white. And a result of black wanting to go ahead and pick a fight here rather than defend the area he'd already previously been interested in on the right-hand side. So we have a lot of weak areas. Black decides he does not want to be enclosed. He wants to get rid of one of the weak stones off the board. He does not want to be enclosed. Now we only have A being too close to thickness. So if we're going to profit from this wall, we've got to do something in regards to A. And there are a lot of different ideas that probably spring to mind. I think the three that are most likely to spring to mind are capping, pincering, or approaching. Which one do you guys like? What's your preference? Okay. I'm sorry, Dasan. Shoulder hit. Fine, that'll work too. Alright, we've got someone, and forgive me if this is completely incorrect, but we've got someone going with Dasan's shoulder hit. I have a feeling because he is Dasan, trying to get in on a right answer. I could be wrong about that, just my opinion. But yeah, looks like no one... Oh, nope, sorry. Zalor does like B. Okay, so we've actually got preferences for everything mentioned. Okay. Well, in the actual game, we see white being somewhat aggressive and approaching as well as putting a little bit of pressure on the pincered stone. We could go ahead and cap. We would expect white or black to respond. And the minute black responds, it seems like we need another move here. Because we can envision things like peeps, we can see black jumping out, and suddenly it doesn't look like we're as settled here as we really want to be. This is a bit uncomfortable, yes. We could go ahead and play C. This way, at the very least, we have an idea that we can perhaps connect underneath if we have to. We can perhaps kill the pincered stone if we have to, and we can still get a two-space extension. However, one thing to worry about, though, is black simply saying, okay, you can have that stone. all of that influence for one stone. You can go ahead and kill it. I'll go ahead and take another large move. Worse, later on, we might even find black sacrificing the stones for influence for the top of the board. So it could play that way, but it might get over-concentrated, so we have to be very, very careful of that. Instead, white decides to try to use his area of influence. Oh, sorry, forgot one. Of course there's this. And we might actually want to do this correctly. But that is a lot of territory for black, and we're probably going to have to go back and either give up the 2 stones or protect against black coming out. Because if we take Sente here, do something else, this becomes a little bit of a problem in that if we connect, whoops, not do that. If we connect, then suddenly we've got all of these different weak groups popping up again, and we probably don't want that. So if black goes after this, chances are we're giving it to him. Or we're going to give up Sente and ensure that that can't actually happen, in which case we're getting a wall and Gote. I would play this way more maybe in a large handicap game, just to get a lot of influence to negate some of those handy stones. But I don't think I would go ahead and play this now. Indeed, after white already has... Ooh, don't click. I almost clicked. After white's already played this stone, the ability for R9 to live, which we're going to see in a second when I go over it, is drastically reduced. Because of that, black actually pincers. But let's say black does not pincer here. And we go back and we see the exact same variation. Well, a little bit hard to live here. We can't connect. If we keep running, we're going to have to go ahead and make a bunch of slow moves in order to live. We don't want that either. So this is becoming very, very nice for white. Chances are the 3-3 is going to be very, very easy now if he has to play this way. Or, sorry, if he does this rather. Because we're already undercutting. We can just go ahead and hop into the 3-3 at this point. What about Q8 for B? Is that? Yeah, it is. You really probably wouldn't want to play that move until you were certain that you had life as is for the group. Because the reason why Q8 is such a pain is because you turn into weak groups. But if the group that's, separating you and making you weak is not alive, then you're not really a weak group. So we can't play this until this is alive. Especially since we have to connect in Gote and force both groups to run. But if the groups can just turn around and kill you, that doesn't really matter then. So it is a weakness, but we can only carry it out after, the group's alive. So black says, forget that, I'm going to pincer you. You're not going to lean on my stone. At which point, white immediately picks the one move I always reject on principle. I almost always reject jumping up here, because in most situations I don't consider it to be very good. On a blank board, for example, well, let's make this somewhat reasonable. Give you an extra... There we go. On a blank board, for example, I really don't like this leaning variation. And it's about the only thing you can actually pick once you actually jump out of a tight pincer like this. It's either the shoulder hit, or something even worse. A variation in which you are quite literally only getting shape here. No real profit besides the influence in the center, so it needs to be worth a lot to play this way. Whoa, lag. As a result, there are a lot of times that I completely disregard jumping up simply because I almost always disregard jumping up. But here it's actually a good move. Because one thing about two-space extensions, and some of you queues might want to remember this, is that the two-space extension is not alive in and of itself. It's a nice beginning for life. Absolutely. It's a good start. But if you're completely surrounded, you're probably not going to live. And a lot of queues tend to fall into that mistake. They go around once they learn the value of the two-space extension, how it's the beginning of a nice base, and they just try to make two-space extensions all over the place. That becomes their goal for reducing. Just make a two-space extension here. If you give your opponent influence because of it, make a two-space extension somewhere else. So black's got to be very, very careful here. And Fraudwith admits that he is guilty of that. It's okay, I was too. We all go through it. Then we learn how to take advantage of those, and we get even stronger. So that's okay. Question, isn't it alive with an additional stone on the 5th line like P12? Where is P12? If it was completely surrounded with just that shape, then still no. So black goes ahead and jumps out. I guess I could. And I guess I could probably make a lecture like that a bit more interesting by using my own games as an example. So I think I have a couple of games on hard drive or DVD somewhere where I've played opponents like that. That's very true, Lazy Dragon. But alright, black goes ahead and protects his corner. So naturally, white says, I'm going to surround you. Now, we have a couple of options on how to surround. He could have gone ahead and picked this way, but again, this little batch of influence here, this wall that I'm marking right now, not immortal. We can think how to maybe get eyes if we have Sente to do so, but definitely not fine as is. And now we're being separated from another weak group that we just created, so that's no good. We can go ahead and jump from this way, but then the two-space extension, or the one-space jump, sorry, is in a lot of trouble as well. So white tries to very, very lightly begin surrounding the group in such a way that doesn't make it very, very easy to go ahead and just split and cause trouble. But black, ever determined to kill Lee Sedol, tries to do it regardless. And it seems, Ukasu says, if O5 gets weak, let's find out what O5 is. There, okay. Then white can't really cut an N3, true. Yeah, that group needs to be fine in order to go ahead and create a group that's going to potentially make M4 very, very strong. Very, very true. Alright, so black is now trying to split white. Have a couple of options here. We can go ahead and jump out, but black's going to probably follow us as well. And then we're suddenly almost behind enemy lines with our bottom right group. We could go and play S16, but there's really no reason to play S16 right now because we know it's not going to make us live. All S16 is really going to do is force the response of R17, which is going to make sure that we can never play the 3-3 at all in this game. So that's just getting rid of Aji. We don't like that. So instead of jumping out and continuing to strengthen black's attack against our groups, White decides to go ahead and... Oh, sorry. Lazy Dragon, my first thought here is P12. Very close. White, in fact, decides to attach to the other stone in order to try to cut. Oh, P, not Q. Yeah. White decides to go ahead and attach to Q12. Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah, this... not really certain what's going to happen here. There's a lot of variations. There's this, which isn't entirely good for white. I really can't see a nice clean way of protecting this, because either way we go, we're gonna have that annoying little cut remaining. Might even be able to just get away with this. Yeah, even this might be okay. Forget the one stone. If he wants to go after that, that might be okay. Can still attack the bottom group. Anyway, white plays this instead of struggling against it. Black tries to go ahead and connect up. Similar to variation I just went over. White pushes forward. Takes the stone in order to get some eye shape. Black connects. Oh, sigh. Yeah, it's a bit awful, and now I've got to decide. White strengthens his stone, and that was played out of order. However, in the interest of not completely destroying the tree, I'm not going to go back and fix it either. Sorry. I can make believe I made no mistake. Sorry, I forgot. I omitted because I got distracted by the questions. I meant to play this exchange first, and then go back and play this. This would be the actual game. Oh, whatever. I'll continue with this one then. So it's in the right order. Bye-bye, tree. It is unforgivable. Not a single lecture goes by in which I don't destroy it. No, I don't remember ever correctly doing a tree either. But alright, let's see. So, white strengthens his stone. Black attacks white's group, giving it the option of escaping. Black, not wanting to get surrounded, jumps out. Ah, yes. The audio tree is perfect. And now we have a bit of a complicated situation developing, and why I picked this game. Because as you can see, we've got two groups that aren't quite alive yet. We've got a lot of very large moves that we want to get in. For example, the upper right-hand corner. We do want to go ahead and surround that, since Black hasn't played a move to ensure that we couldn't. He didn't jump out. We want to go ahead sometime and, as I think Ukasus mentioned, get to potentially play N3. We still have F3 to go back and look after. So this game is beginning to get a little bit complicated. There's a lot of areas that both players are interested in. Surrounding a corner is very, very large. So white moves to follow up. Black has to respond. Now, he could have responded by trying to go this way instead. but that is just going to lead to another jump and potential surround, with white being able to follow up later on. White descends. Maybe later on we can go ahead and take advantage of this cut point, but for now we can't. Instead, black decides to go ahead and counterattack. Oh, sorry. What about responding N17? I'm not sure about what you mean by responding N17. Oh, for black? Here you mean? Could, but keep in mind you're strengthening white now. The whole idea of not playing the Hane and not poking at that weak point is because we don't want to strengthen white any more than he is right now. This group isn't entirely alive just yet. Later on we might be able to go back and cut through some things as well. If we start playing in this particular fashion, then go away, here. Then we start to lose the ability to go back and cut through effectively. We also add the added problem that we're giving white more strength when we're already weak in the middle, which is also what we don't want to do. So black takes Sente and counterattacks white. White plays the obvious move. Decent shape, and ensures he's not going to be surrounded. Black begins to poke into his shape. White says, no, you are not going to cut me off, thank you. Because if he jumped out again, this becomes a problem. Now we're being threatened to be cut in two different places. And we do not want that. So connects up. Black follows up. Again, putting lots of pressure on the bottom group. Remember I said this wasn't quite alive yet. Now we see why it's not. I don't see how P8 defends against N7. And really? N7 only threatens to cut one group now, right? Not the two that it was threatening before. In this variation, we're threatening to cut two different places, right? 1 and 2. So we're either threatening to completely kill white, or we're threatening to kill two stones. Either way, the group in the middle is safe. So can't allow that to happen. So not quite alive yet. White has to go back and make sure that he is. Black protects his shape, because there's a lot of weak points there. But after N7, how does white respond? Couple of options. You could respond simply by playing M5. I mean, that'd take care of it. Force a response out of black too. Allow you to jump out for protection. As it stands, we are not going to be able to see that for now, because white takes Sente and defends himself. And black gets some territory. And now there's a bit of a potential lull in the fighting, because no one's behind enemy lines anymore. White's out. Barely, but he's out. Black seems to be okay in the middle. He's not behind enemy lines either. The corners are all fine. Unfortunately, by this last move of black's, F3 is now fine. We could go ahead and invade at H4, but even if it lives, it's going to be Gote. So there's that to think about. Could take a large move. That's Gote as well. So rather than take a Gote move somewhere else on the board, White decides that he's going to keep fighting. As should be no surprise to anyone given this is Lee Sedol. Black connects. White defends the stone, opening up more cuts, because now we've got a small knight here and here. Indeed, Radishimo. So black has to decide which connection is more important, and it's the one with the largest group. So he defends. White goes after some shape. Make sure that's never going to be an eye. Really, really difficult to keep attacking something that can go back and live. Though I'm sure we've all tried at some point. And white plays to cut. Now, since we can't defend everything, black decides to play away to see if he can get some strength and finally settle that black group in the center. White says, no, you're not going to do that. I'm going to cut you off, if at all possible, because he's not done fighting. This F-17 stone is very far away from the center, and as far as White's concerned, he's going to ensure that it never gets there, that this is not going to be any kind of settling move. Black tries to connect up anyway, and white again aggressively cuts it off, directly with a shoulder hit. When Lee Sedol starts fighting, he does not let you go. How about F-16 then? Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying F-16 because if we play modern or normal Joseki, we can go ahead and do something along the lines of this, and suddenly everyone's happy. But again, chances are White's not going to respond that way. He wants to keep you separated, so he'll probably still keep you separated. He might go ahead and shoulder hit immediately. He might go ahead and pincer you. He might actually go ahead and ignore you at this point. And again, lean on you to separate you. There's a lot of different ideas that he could play here. Alright. No problem. Questions are good. Probably weren't the only one wondering that. Alright. So white is aggressively separating both of these two groups. Something that I love to do in my own games. Even if it doesn't always turn out nearly as well as it will for Lee Sedol. I love playing shoulder hits to attack something. Especially since when I was first learning Go, I did have some stronger players review my games one time, and they would almost always tell me, never shoulder hit or attach. And when you begin getting stronger, you realize shoulder hits and attachments are very, very good for attacking. But alright. Black moves to settle. White obviously follows up. He's not going to get caught being distracted and defending a corner when he should be fighting the group that was not defended, that's not settling. So he continues. And with this one move, if you didn't see it before, you realize what exactly is going on the board right now. Because not only is this group in the middle under attack, white's also going after the left-hand side for development. So this group's going to have to struggle for life, but at the same time, white's beginning to get to this area where he doesn't care if you live. I mean, go ahead, make your two eyes. he still knows exactly how he's going to get points. He knows where the profit's coming from. So when we see black move and threaten to connect, white just continues to go and get that profit. He's not going to be distracted and say, oh no, what about these stones? I'm not going to let you connect up to them. He's going to go ahead and simply go and keep taking the profit for him. So black tries to settle. White's happy to make, what is this line? Potential 8th line territory? 7th and 8th line? I guess that's good. I don't think anyone would mind 7th and 8th line development. However, just because he's taking territory on the left-hand side doesn't mean he's going to let his group die off or just give up the attack in exchange for the profit on the left. He does keep attacking. To make sure that black stays unsettled, has to defend, make sure that his group's not going to suddenly croak. Black connects, so white's got to be careful. He doesn't get he doesn't get this move in, which would have ensured that he has no problems getting life. He'd be nice and alive here, white would. Black connects instead, makes it a little bit harder for white. So white says, I'm gonna go ahead and cut you off, see if I can kill it anyway. Plays the Hane. And that's a pretty nice move. Black can still go ahead and cut at, where are we? A or B, or even C. But he's not going to kill the stones. So instead, black threatens to get into a double Atari. Too many cutting points. White has to defend. And here's where things get really, really, really interesting. How on earth is white going to settle this group? Because he's obviously losing any hope of making two eyes locally. So he's either has to kill something, break out. Those are pretty much his only options. Nice answer from Alara. Simply kill black first. Any idea where? It would have been so much simpler, says Dasan, for white if he had Atari L7 instead of H7. Okay, let me go back and find out what H7 was. H7... Oh. Instead of L7. Okay. U. I are not seeing H7. Oh, J7. Oh, I see. Ah, you're referring to this. Yeah, that would have been a lot easier. That is true. It is much easier. That is true. Black has no choice but to go ahead and... Well, I guess he could just go ahead and... Can't he? Yeah, he can just go ahead and extend at this point. And he's connected. Center 3 are capture, that's true. Black's connected up though, that's a bit of a bummer. White has his sights on pretty much everything. But white decided that since black has happily cut himself into two different groups, he's going to make it very, very hard for both of them to live. So white plays here. Can't cut, doesn't work. So he extends. Forces a connection. And here's where things get fun. Threatens to cut off. Can't allow it to happen. Threatens to make an eye. But here you can see what he's yes, he's threatening to go ahead and take S, what is that, 9 for himself. If he's able to do that, he might have himself a couple of eyes. And if he has a couple of eyes, when this has none, that's not looking healthy for black. So he connects. Oh, sorry. It would be Ko, no? If black completely ignores it. Completely ignores what? Completely ignores R8. Yeah. If black, for whatever reason, goes somewhere else, then yes, that would definitely be a connection. So black connects here. No Kos today. Thank you very much. Forces response. Threatens to get some eyes. Black says no eyes for you. You are going to die. Keeps white low on eyes. And now we have a very, very complicated life and death problem here. But luckily, well, let's see, who's seen it? Who's seen it yet? Has anyone figured out the status of this group yet? No. It is ugly, but it's also connected. How do we connect? Q13, no. T13 from Ukasus. Yep. That would be correct. So black gets to connect. White is on his way to living. But now he has another group to go after. So while he has a group to go after, he's not going to try to make just two eyes. No, 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 no. He's going to see if he can capture. So he surrounds black. White has ensured that black needs to go back and make sure that he can live. So he steals some of white's eyes. If your opponent can't live, that makes your chance at life a lot better. Threatens to link under. And this is a sequence that we'd probably not, most of us probably wouldn't see. This stone can be killed. That is absolutely true. However, this cut is now brutal in the capture race, because we can't target the stone, otherwise our stones are going to die. So we have to connect to preserve our liberties. So what does that mean about these stones in the corner? Are they going to live? Of course they're not going to live. But for every move that white gets back here, he just bought himself liberties. Because white's gonna have white is enforced black to go back and play all of these stones to ensure that white can actually be captured, since they're sharing liberties. Unfortunately, I also got ahead of myself. That's 2 mistakes, I'm happy to say. A lot of forcing moves for black. Gets an eye for himself. And then white extends. Now it becomes a problem. Because essentially what we have in this situation is white's group with a potential eye, if he takes, right? We've got black's group with an eye. We've got this middle black group that has to go back now because it has absolutely no eyes and capture every stone that white puts in his corner. So moves to capture. And now that is a bunch of stones that white just bought for himself. A bunch of liberties, sorry, that white just bought for himself. You don't see how those white stones help? It's this group that we're interested in right now. This group is currently sharing liberties with the middle group. So if we want to actually capture this group that is currently in Seki with the other black group, we have to go ahead and play those 5 stones in the corner. Otherwise, we're going to kill ourselves. So white just purchased himself a bunch of extra liberties for this particular Seki with this black group. The question is, has he purchased himself enough extra liberties to not make that a Seki and actually make that simply dead? White gets rid of another liberty and ensures he has an eye. Can't black just N6, 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 N6? Where's N... Oh, there. Duh. Can't black just N6? Doot. Let's see. That would be Gote. Can he afford to do it just yet? There's the 5 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He might be able to do that if he wants to give up white being killed. Right now, he hasn't given that up. So he goes after white's extra eye, forcing the capture race. Black has to take. Ensures that's not going to be Ko or anything evil. Ensures black can't live. And now we have a problem, because now one person has to die. So black buys himself some extra liberties. Which he did successfully. Not quite enough yet, though. Still haven't made ourselves a new eye. And I'm just kind of going through this because he's just kind of struggling here. Looking for Aji. And at this point, yeah. And at this point the question becomes how many liberties does each player have? Because black hasn't managed to get himself very many more. So we can go ahead and count that out. One second. Something's... Darn it. Get over here. Sorry, I almost dropped my glass on the floor. That would have been very bad. So, black's got a few liberties. White, unfortunately, also has a few liberties. We can see who has more. Which is why black resigns at this point. Not to mention the territory over on the left-hand side of the board. That's all pretty much sealed off now, which is also very nice. And if white's not dead, which he unfortunately is not, that is simply not enough territory. Only way that would have been enough territory, given what white made for himself on the left while attacking black's group, is if white was kind enough to die, and he wasn't. So that's why I picked this game. This was a very, very interesting life and death scenario here in the middle, with both of these groups trying to capture whites. And yet, despite the fighting, white still managed to get a lot of territory for himself on the left side of the board. So it was a nice aggressive game, but it wasn't a game just to kill things, which tends to be a mistake. People get used to fighting a group, they really see that they can potentially kill it, and they don't really think about how they can profit while they're trying to attack something. And in this game we were able to see quite clearly that white never took his eye off what he was actually able to acquire for himself while he was attacking. He wasn't trying to attack just to kill something. He was attacking for profit, which is something that we tend to not remember as often as we should. Or at least I don't. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the game.